Most gardeners ruin perfectly good biochar by treating it like magic dust. They sprinkle it into beds, maybe mix in a little compost, and expect explosive growth. Then they wonder why plants stall, leaves pale out, and growth actually slows down for a few weeks. I've done it, and I've seen it happen in client gardens. Raw biochar without mineral balance doesn't feed soil, it steals from it. The real shift happens when you stop thinking about biochar alone and start building a biochar hybrid. And the simplest upgrade? Wood ash. If you're serious about growing food and not just following trends, subscribe to Hydrohaven now, because this channel is about what actually works in real soil, not recycled advice from garden blogs. Now let's get straight into why adding wood ash changes everything. Most biochar fails because it's incomplete. Biochar is basically carbon skeleton. It's porous, stable, and loaded with surface area. That's great. It holds water, houses microbes, and buffers nutrients. But fresh biochar is nutritionally empty and often slightly alkaline. Worse, its surface charge pulls in nitrogen and other nutrients before your plants can access them. That's the infamous nitrogen drawdown people talk about. Wood ash, on the other hand, is mineral dense. It's rich in potassium, calcium carbonate, small amounts of phosphorus, magnesium, and trace elements. It's highly alkaline and fast-acting. On its own, wood ash can spike soil pH too quickly and burn roots if overused. But when you combine the two correctly, biochar becomes a mineral sponge and wood ash becomes a controlled release nutrient source. That's the hybrid. This isn't about dumping ash into your beds. Let me be clear. If you take a shovel of ash and throw it directly into your tomato bed, you can lock up micronutrients within weeks. I've tested this in a raised bed trial. One bed got 0.5 kilogram of ash spread across 1 square meter and lightly scratched in. The result: soil pH jumped from 6.5 to 7.6 in under a month. The tomatoes showed iron deficiency, even though iron was present. It simply became unavailable. But when I pre-mixed that same 0.5 kilogram of ash into 10 kilograms of biochar and let it sit moist for 3 weeks before application, the effect was completely different. The pH shift was slower and stabilized around 7.1. The tomatoes showed deeper green growth and thicker stems compared to both the control and the ash-only bed. The difference was buffering. So here's how I actually make the biochar hybrid. I start with fully cooled crushed biochar. Particle size matters, you know. I aim for pieces smaller than 1 centimeter, ideally around rice grain to pea size. Dust is fine, but you don't want large chunks that just sit there. For every 10 liters of biochar, I add about 1 to 1.5 cups of sifted wood ash. That's roughly 150 to 250 grams, depending on density. If your soil is already neutral to alkaline, stay closer to 1 cup. If you're working acidic ground, like many tropical or high rainfall soils, you can go toward the higher end. I mix the ash thoroughly into the dry char first. Then I wet the mixture with compost tea, diluted urine at 1 to 10 or fish emulsion solution. You want it damp, not soaked. Then I let it sit for at least 2 weeks, ideally 3 to 4. This charging period is non-negotiable. During this time, minerals bind to the char surfaces, microbes colonize it, the harsh alkalinity of ash becomes moderated. The result is a mineralized, biologically active carbon matrix, and that's what goes into the soil. What happens in a small backyard garden, you might wonder? Well, in a typical 10 square meter backyard plot, I apply about 5 to 8 liters of this hybrid per square meter during bed preparation. That's roughly a half bucket per square meter, worked into the top 15 to 20 centimeters of soil. Now, the first year you won't see miracles, you'll see stability, less nutrient leaching during heavy rain, and more consistent moisture retention. Crops like peppers and eggplants show noticeably stronger root systems when you pull them at the end of the season. By year 2, the difference becomes obvious. The soil texture changes. It becomes crumbly, darker, and easier to work. In my own testbed, organic matter increased from 3.2% to 4.5% over 2 seasons, and that was without dramatically increasing compost inputs. That's because the char slows decomposition and holds carbon in place. So, why does wood ash specifically make the difference? A lot of growers charge biochar with compost alone. That's fine, but compost is often low in potassium relative to fruiting crop demand. Wood ash corrects that imbalance. It's typically 5 to 7% potassium by weight, mostly in soluble form. Tomatoes, potatoes, squash and beans respond strongly to potassium availability. In one side-by-side potato trial, I added the hybrid to one half of a 4-meter row and standard compost-only biochar to the other. Same variety, same watering schedule. The hybrid section yielded about 18% more by weight, and tubers were more uniform. But there's a trade-off, right? Too much ash pushes pH too high. Once you cross 7.5 in most garden soils, micronutrients like manganese and zinc become less available. That's why the char buffer is so important. It spreads out the alkalinity and prevents sharp spikes. How does this translate to raised beds? Well, raised beds drain faster and lose nutrients quicker than in-ground systems. They also tend to acidify over time with repeated compost additions and organic fertilizers. In a standard 1.2 by 2.4 meter raised bed, I mix about 15 liters of the hybrid into the entire bed during an annual reset. That's around 2 to 3 large buckets total. I incorporate it evenly into the top 20 centimeters. The result is less compaction and better moisture distribution. During dry spells, beds amended with the hybrid held moisture roughly 1 day longer before wilting compared to untreated beds. That may not sound dramatic, but over a season, it reduces stress cycles significantly. Leafy greens also respond differently. In my experience, lettuce in hybrid amended beds shows thicker leaves and slower bolting under moderate heat. That's likely due to improved calcium availability from the ash combined with better moisture regulation from the char. Yes, you can use this concept in hydroponic systems. Obviously, you're not dumping biochar into your nutrient reservoir, but the hybrid concept applies to media-based hydroponics. In Dutch bucket systems and large grow bags, I've blended 10% biochar hybrid into cocoa coir or perlite mixes by volume. That means 1 liter of hybrid for every 9 liters of base media. The char provides microbial habitat and nutrient buffering, while the ash mineralized surfaces help stabilize potassium and calcium levels in the root zone, reducing fluctuations between feed cycles. In trials with hydroponic tomatoes, media containing the hybrid showed fewer blossom end rot issues compared to plain cocoa under identical nutrient solution. The buffering capacity seems to help regulate calcium uptake. But this only works if the hybrid is properly aged and flushed before use. Fresh ash will absolutely spike EC and damage roots in hydro systems. I rinse the charged hybrid once with clean water and let it drain before blending into hydro media. Let's correct a common myth about wood ash. People say wood ash is just natural lime. That's only partially true. Yes, it raises pH like lime, but it also contains soluble salts and nutrients that lime does not. That's why you must treat it with respect. Another myth is that biochar lasts forever and never changes. In reality, its function evolves. In year 1, it mostly buffers nutrients. By year 3 and beyond, it becomes a stable microbial condominium that permanently alters soil structure. The ash minerals integrated into it continue cycling through the soil food web. This is long-term soil architecture, not a seasonal fertilizer trick. This is about building soil that improves every season. The biochar hybrid isn't flashy. You won't get overnight transformation. What you get is cumulative advantage, better root exploration, more stable nutrient availability, reduced leaching in heavy rain, and improved drought resilience. And the beauty is that both ingredients are often free. Pruned branches become char. Fireplace or cook stove ash becomes mineral input. Instead of waste, you're building infrastructure in your soil. If you care about yield, nutrient density, and long-term fertility, this approach makes sense. It's not about copying ancient techniques blindly or chasing regenerative buzzwords. It's about understanding chemistry, biology, and structure, and making them work together. If this kind of practical, experience-tested information helps you grow better food, subscribe to HydroHaven and share this video with another serious gardener. The more we focus on building soil intelligently instead of chasing quick fixes, the better our harvests get year after year.